Karen tried to get a free hotel stay with a lawsuit posted by Little Motion, and it has an update. Oh my gosh, here we go. For context, I'm a 22-year-old woman, but I've been told that I look around 17. I work for a boutique hotel and resort as a front desk supervisor. Our resort is separated into 3 buildings: our hotel, our pools and spa, and our restaurant. I'm used to pretty high maintenance people for the most part. I've worked in customer service since leaving high school, so not a lot bothers me, and I can usually diffuse stressful situations easily. Basically, I've seen my fair share of Karens. I'm not sure how it is at other hotels, but at my hotel, reservations that are made for the same day as check-in are treated with a bit more security since we've been scammed before. It's a security policy to make a copy of the driver's license at check-in in case the credit card turns out to be stolen. That way, we have a picture of the guest. Today, we had a same-day reservation come through a third party, something like Expedia or Priceline. No biggie. When the guest comes in, she seems nice enough. No typical Karen haircut or anything like that. I go through the motions, ask to see her ID, and to get a credit card for incidentals. She hands them over, and I set the ID on our scanner. "What are you doing?" she snaps. "Hey, I'm just making a copy of your ID for the reservation." "You can't do that." I thought, then I took the ID out to double check that it wasn't a military ID, which is illegal to copy in the US. It was a regular state driver's license. "I'm sorry, ma'am, it's a security policy. We do this with all of our same-day reservations." "You think I'll scam you? You treat my people like this? My mother is disabled and you're making her wait in the car." To clarify, she was of Hispanic or Latina descent, one of the two. "No, ma'am, we do this every same day." She cuts me off. "Get me your manager." I sigh and radio my manager to the front desk. Once she's there, Karen goes into this long rant about how we were stealing her personal information and how it was against the law to make copies of a person's ID. My manager looked at her and then at me. "She's the woman on the ID. Just go ahead and check them in." I did as I was told and checked in the group of 4 into one of our handicap-accessible rooms. These rooms were bigger with low-profile beds and roll-in showers for wheelchairs. Around an hour later, Karen called the desk asking for an extra blanket, asking me to turn up the thermostat for her because she couldn't figure it out, asking for extras of the free coffee in the room and whatever else that she could get for free. No biggie, that's what I'm here for. Now, here's where I nearly snapped. Later in the evening, she called me asking if we had a step stool for her mother to use to get into bed. Now, her mother was around my height, 5'7", and these beds were low profile already, but she was, for lack of better words, extremely overweight. So I believed it may be a bit more difficult for her to get from her motorized scooter onto the bed. I let them know that we didn't have a step stool in this building, but that I would be happy to call the spa and pool to see if they had one that we could use. The girl I spoke to at the desk told me that they had step stools in the locker rooms, but she didn't think that we could use them. She asked around and her manager said that they didn't have any extra stools. I called Karen. "I'm sorry, but it doesn't look like that we have any stools on property for guest use in the rooms. For your inconvenience, I'd be happy to give you a meal voucher for dinner." She huffed. "You have trash cans at your desk, right?" "Yes, ma'am, I have one trash can." "That means you have others in the building that we can use." I paused, trying to figure out how that tied into our issue. "I'm sorry, you do have 2 in your room, right?" "Well, yes, but they're small and not sturdy enough. If we double up, we can use that." "Ma'am, you can't use our trash cans as step stools." "Don't tell me what I can or can't do. You have 2 of those trash cans, don't ya?" "Not for that purpose, no." "OP, you have empty rooms, don't ya?" "We do." "Here's what you are going to do. You will go to these rooms and get me however many trash cans that I need." "No, ma'am, I'm not going to do that." That made her mad. "Excuse me?" "Those plastic trash cans are waste baskets for bathrooms. Even stacked up, they aren't made to hold the weight of an adult. That poses a risk for your mother, and if she fell off and got hurt, or if they broke and she cut her leg, that would make us liable. It's a major safety hazard. You know you're breaking the law by not making this room handicap accessible." "The beds in those rooms are low profile and up to standard." She apparently didn't care and cut me off again, asking to be transferred to my manager. I let her know that I was acting manager since the woman she had spoken to at check-in had gone home for the night and wouldn't be in for 2 days. You can't be a supervisor or a manager, you're too young. Ma'am, I'm 22. No, you're not. Okay, I told her that I would be happy to help her come up with another solution. Call her at home. I'm sorry? You're going to call your manager at home, she demanded. I can try to reach her. No, you're going to reach her. And she hung up. No, I didn't get through to my manager. It was late into the night at that point. Of course I didn't. So I sent one of our maintenance men to the storage room, had him clean off one of his work stools, and had him take it to her. Was it clean enough? Of course not, but she took it. I'll sum the rest of tonight's drama since this post is long enough. Karen decided to ignore our non-smoking policy and smoked MJ inside the room, leading to complaints from other guests. When security confronted her, she told them that she would sue us for harassment because it was medical. We allowed her to smoke on her balcony, and she then threatened us for breaking a law because we didn't have a snack vending machine on our property. After many other complaints, she called me, telling me to call my manager to comp her room for her trouble. I told her I wouldn't call her due to the time and that I was, again, active manager. But that, if she would like, I would be happy to put all of tonight's events into an email for her. We got an update, here's the conclusion. So, this first part I got from my coworker that had taken over after I went home last night. According to him, aside from the noise complaints from the surrounding rooms, Karen decided her room service was not to her liking. So instead of calling the desk or setting the food in the hall for collection, she threw it against the wall, spraying ketchup all over our white walls and light brown carpet. In addition to this, her credit card had declined during night audit, meaning she was now staying there for free. A new credit card was put on file after I got in, followed by her saying that she wanted to split payment among the 4 adults staying in the room. Fine, can do. When the woman finally left, she stopped at the front desk to fight us on her rate and to put a third card on file. She had a double rate, signed for it, and authorized it, but she demanded a free stay for her troubles. When we told her that she'd signed an agreement to pay for both nights, she threw a fit, saying, "This is racist. With everything going on, you can't treat me like this. I am your customer. I will sue you for violating every law I've clocked during this stay." Ma'am, you've signed the contract. The contract, it's wrong. This place is horrible and I should have never stayed here. She then stormed out without giving us the credit card info. My manager called her, emailed her, and finally just charged the card that we had on file. I fully expect her to call me tonight to scream more, but at this point, I am so done. I'll be polite, but I'm not giving her any satisfaction. Imagine how different this story would have gone if OP did not stand up to Karen. She'd continue her Karen tirades, just doing it because, well, people let her do it. What do you think? How would you handle this if you were OP? My pool is not a motel room, posted by disgruntled veteran. Background. I'm a combat veteran and a school teacher at this time, and my wife was a school teacher as well. So I bought my first house 12 years ago. It was in a low middle-class neighborhood with a lot of working-class families. My house had a pool in the backyard, and my parents bought me and my wife a hot tub as a wedding and housewarming gift. 2 weeks after moving in, we found a stranger and 6 teenage kids swimming in our pool when we got home. We will call them entitled mom, entitled daughter, entitled son, and the others I assume to be their friends and or boyfriend. The daughter was about 18 or 19 years old, and her brother was about 17. When we told them to get out and to get off of our property, the entitled mom, who sounds like a Karen, told me that the previous owner gave them permission to come over whenever they wanted to swim. I explained to her that I was the new owner and that I was not okay with it. I told the entitled mom, Karen, that not only do I not know them, but there is a legal liability for me if they got hurt. She yelled and fake cried, saying that I was being a bad neighbor, selfish, and forcing her kids to sweat in the summer heat. She told me that if they died of heat stroke, it was my fault for not letting them swim in my pool. I told her to get the heck off of my property and never return. Fast forward 2 weeks. I had put up a no trespassing sign on my property in multiple spots and had gotten to know many of the not entitled neighbors. They were great, and they told me to ignore Karen and her kids. They told us she was already bad-mouthing us, but no one ever believed her. Now, I start to notice when I wake up in the morning that there is evidence of people using my pool and hot tub at night when we are asleep or away. I find beer cans, cigarette butts, and even a used rubber. I figure it has to be from Karen and or her brats. So, I install cameras on the grounds and start videotaping. Sure enough, I catch the daughter and a few others hanging out in my pool on Friday nights when my wife and I are out. Friday nights, she goes to a friend's house for movies and wine, and I play Warhammer 40K or card games. I figure they must have been waiting for us to leave and then threw a mini party or were quietly swimming while we slept. So I discussed it with my wife and decided to teach Karen and her brats a lesson. So, the next Friday night, I park my car a street over, and my wife does the same. We wait in the dark house to see if any of them come over. Daughter and I assume her boyfriend, the son and I assume his girlfriend, and 4 other teen couples come right over and start skinny dipping in my pool and hot tub. Why a bro and sis would do that together still bothers me. They have beer and I can smell the skunk from inside the house. I wait 45 minutes for them to get really into their fun, and 2 are actually doing stuff in my pool. I then spring my trap. I go out with my rifle, a Ruger Mini 14 with 20-round magazines for you weapon enthusiasts like me. I point it at the ground, but at the ready. When I reach the pool, my wife flips on the back lights and I yell for them to freeze or I'll shoot. My wife calls the police meanwhile. They all have the deer in the headlights look on their faces, and not one of them tries to speak for a good minute. The daughter tells us that she has permission to be there and that we need to let them get dressed. I tell them that if they move towards me or their property, that I would consider them to be charging me or reaching for a weapon, and I'd shoot. They must have believed me because they froze. One girl begged me to give her her clothes while she was trying to cover her chest with her hands. Not being a total jerk, I say that I will throw them all of their clothing. I then walk over to their piles of clothing, phones and purses, and throw everything into the pool. They freak out trying to save their phones and other goods. After 10 minutes, the police show up and they have the kids climb out of the pool wearing their soaked clothes and trying to shake their phones dry. I show the police the videos from our cameras, the no trespassing signs, and explain to them that I had told them and their mother that they were persona non grata. The kids were arrested for trespassing, possession of a controlled substance, underage drinking, and indecent exposure. The police recommended that next time I leave the weapon in the safe and let them just come and get them. I told them that I thought they may attack my wife and had to stand my ground. I proved that I never pointed it at them with the videos, so I couldn't be charged with anything. As the kids are being loaded into the police cruisers, Karen shows up, yelling at the police and my wife and I. She demands that the police let them go and even tries to open the door on one of the cruisers. The police threaten her with being arrested if she doesn't back off and leave my wife and I alone. I later found out that the charges against the teens were reduced and they all had plea deals. They all got community service, fines, and were put on probation. We got a restraining order against Karen and her brats, so they couldn't bother us again. I sent a bill to Karen for the cost of draining, disinfecting, and refilling my pool, and having a professional cleaning service clean up the kids' mess. The bill was for about $400. I had my parents' attorney send it to Karen with a letter stating that if it was not paid in 30 days, then we would sue her for a larger amount. She paid and sent a check to my attorney, and thankfully it did not bounce. About a year later, the entire entitled family moved away, and we never have heard from them again. Airport Karens, posted by Friendly Mistake 02. Of all places, really, an airport? Here we go. So this happened earlier this month. I'm a 20-year-old female and decided to go to Spain for the summer to be an au pair. Sadly, this didn't work out due to the weather conditions as well as flight cancellations. I helped them find another au pair though. So I live in West Virginia. Those of you who have been here or live here know that there is only one major airport in the state, Yeager Airport, CRW, and it's small compared to many other states. So nothing eventful happened between CRW and Charlotte, CLT. I had a 5-hour layover originally at CLT, but due to bad weather in Miami, I was stuck for 3 extra hours. When boarding came around, the usual families with young kiddos, elderly, people with disabilities, and first class go first. I have generalized anxiety disorder, and I was allowed to board with the first group if I wanted to. I took the option as I was already stressed out and just wanted out of this huge airport. As I was walking to get in line, this obnoxious voice comes from behind me. "Excuse me, you aren't disabled." I turn around and sigh as I see the Karen with her 2 teenagers beside her. "Actually," I say, "I have generalized anxiety disorder. The airline is letting me board early if I want to." "Well, for someone with anxiety, you're pretty dang calm." I roll my eyes and grab my carry-on and walk to the gate, giving the person my ticket and boarding the plane. I get to my seat and get comfortable. The flight was uneventful, minus some unexpected turbulence before landing. Miami was also kinda uneventful until on the flight to go to O'Hare. Yeah, I'm never booking a flight through Expedia again. I wasn't so stressed out because the weather was great from Miami to O'Hare and the wait time was only 2 hours. So I boarded the plane during my time and sat down in my seat. Well, a few moments later, this nice old man comes and asks if he can squeeze by so he can get to his seat at the window. I let him by, and the row is now full. The last person to board is a Karen. The first thing she does is walk to the row in front of me and demand the window seat. When the woman refused, she called an attendant over and told her the issue. Karen 2 says, "This woman won't give me my seat." Attendant says, "Oh yes, let me see your ticket stub so I can check the seat number, miss." Woman says, "Here's mine." The attendant, after checking the nice woman's ticket, "Karen, your seat is in the back of the plane. Please stop bothering other passengers." That ended that Karen's rage moment. Later, I found out that she was the nice old man's daughter. Feel bad for him. Now, this one I witnessed as I was waiting on my homebound flight due to the last one to Spain being canceled due to a hurricane or something. We got to O'Hare smoothly and there wasn't any issues until they canceled the flight to Madrid. I was honestly kind of expecting it, so I wasn't bothered much by it. I just asked if they would be helping me return home and they said, of course. So I left the American Center and went to Spirit Airlines. They had one leaving to Yeager Airport in Charleston, West Virginia in 2 hours, so I gave them the voucher. About 5 minutes later into waiting, I heard screaming and, like everyone else did, walked to see what's going on. There was this couple, Karen 3 and Ken, who were screaming at the lady behind the counter due to their flight to Vegas being canceled due to poor weather conditions. This was in United. Karen says, "Get us on our frickin' flight right now." The worker says, "Ma'am, as I have said multiple times now, the flight has been canceled due to bad weather in Texas. We can issue you a voucher for the total cost of the flight or book you for the next available option." Ken says, "No, we're getting on that frickin' plane now." At this point, security had been called and came to dissipate the situation. They also cleared the area. Before I boarded, though, both of them were arrested for smuggling. They had some illegal substances in their bags. As we get into the next story, I have to tell you something. Hey, also, I added more stories to the new 24/7 HOA Karen radio stream on the channel, perfect to binge or play for background noise while you sleep. Check out the link in the description or on the front page of the channel. It looks like this. Fired. Employers' lawyers should have done their homework. I did. Posted by Zakana. This happened to me about 20 years ago while in college. I'm being deliberately vague because reasons. The background. I got a job basically office sitting on weekends. I showed up at 8 a.m. and every hour I checked over things, handled the occasional phone call, and then left when the 4 p.m. person arrived. Most of the time I read, watched TV, or played games on my laptop. I probably worked no more than 10 minutes of every hour unless something went wrong. It went on like this for years. The pay was decent, holidays were double pay, and I even had opportunities to cover weekday shifts when others were sick. One day, while I was covering the midday shift, my boss asked me to come into his office. He told me that the evening weekday position was going to become available that night. He offered me the position, which I accepted. I was told to punch out and return at 5 p.m. that night. The reason it went down like this should be obvious. Things went okay for a while. I showed up at 4 p.m., did the normal things, and then left at 12 a.m. when my relief arrived. It was a little more work, more call volumes, and so on. And then, after 9 months, things started to go south. The daytime person developed a huge attitude problem and went from a nice person to a total Karen. She would complain about everything I did. For example, one time a system jammed up at a remote site and she called them. 5 hours later, I saw the jam was still there, so I called that site again to see if they were still working on it or if something else was wrong, because the woman on our end, who would have been the one to help them, was leaving soon. They did have a problem, and so I hooked them up. My reward for making sure the problem got solved and not having to bother an upper-level employee at home on a Friday just after having left work? I got yelled at because Karen complained that I had apparently ignored her log entry about the issue. My defense was ignored. The boss had me highlight important things on the log to verify that I had read them. Things plodded on for a while with this new normal. I tiptoed around Karen when needed, thankful for the fact that I only had to deal with her for no more than 5 minutes. I did the stupid highlighting thing, and my log entries started getting more and more detailed, even referencing Karen's calls when I had to follow up on an issue that crossed shifts. The firing. The following summer, just after I crossed the year mark, I went on vacation to visit some friends out of state. When I got back, after about a week, my boss came down after everyone had left and had me describe how I did a certain task which involved certain updates. I explained to him how I did it and so forth. He then told me that I had not been doing it at all and that he was firing me. I had transposed the date code of the English file for the French file, which was the previous one. The newest one had already been applied anyways, so nothing was wrong. It was just a reason to get rid of me. So, I left the office. My state is an at-will employment state, which means that I can quit at any time for any reason, and my employer can terminate me at any time for any reason. The only exceptions were state and federal laws, such as race, religion, and so on. I thought I was screwed, so I just started applying everywhere I could. During my job search, I happened to accidentally stumble upon a link about employment law. Out of curiosity, I read it and discovered that my employer had shot themselves in the foot. In the employee handbook, there was a job security clause. What this stated was that they would never lay us off and such if our jobs were eliminated. We would simply be retrained and sent to fill an opening elsewhere in the company. It sounds good, but resulted in them cooking up reasons to fire people to get around it. But their fancy, high-priced lawyers had missed something. In my state's laws, the ones passed by the legislature, I was screwed because of at will. What they neglected was case law, the ones determined by courts. This site cited a case from the state Supreme Court that had ruled that a job security clause waived at will on the employer side, turning it into a just cause relationship. This means that they had to have a real reason to fire me. The revenge. With that in hand, I sought out a lawyer. After my consultation with her, I set about collecting my evidence. My former boss did not realize that I knew more about this program than he did, seeing as I ran the same software on my own computer and laptop. I experimented. The date of the file, which they tried to use against me, is baked into the version. I was able to demonstrate to my lawyer that if I applied the same update over and over, which my former employer stated would change the date every day, would, in reality, display the date of the file. I showed this by backdating my own copy by a year using the update archive available from the vendor. Next, I showed her how the task used to be automated. A script would snag the file and process it every day on its own. A change on the vendor's site broke the script. It was an easy fix, but no one bothered to do it because the guy who wrote it retired. The fix involved deleting 3 characters on 1 line in the script. The task was also marked as only being a weekday task. In my firing, I was told how important this update was and so forth. If it was so important, why was it not done on weekends or holidays? The vendor pushed out updates on those days too, as I showed my lawyer the one from Christmas morning. And why had the automation not been fixed? With all that in hand, she contacted them. After presenting them with the law, they broke, and all the evidence I had collected, they were forced to settle with me. So, in the end, their fancy high-priced lawyers did not do their homework. I did. Thank you to the wonderful librarians I have known in my life who taught me my information literacy skills. They paid dividends in this case. Update: I never found out how the reaction went down, as the main corporate office that would have dealt with it was in another state, and I never had any contact with those people. I imagine a new handbook was issued before they cut my check though, so I feel bad for those who remained. Karen's fate was sealed about a year later. I saw a Facebook post by a former coworker mentioning that his job with them had ended, so I asked for details. The company experienced a huge loss in revenue. As a result, Karen lost her job as the site I'd worked in was closed. Of about the 50 of us that worked in that office, only 10 or so were moved to another location. Thankfully, most of the ones that I liked were old enough to retire. It did not take a genius to realize that my termination was simply a layoff disguised as a firing. Read your darn emails, Karen. Posted by They Call Me Jaws. I used to work in an office. What kind of work isn't particularly important to the story, so just picture a basic office job. Every January, HR would send an email to all employees with the employee handbook. This included job descriptions, office policies, and so on. Every year since the PDF handbook had been established, it would be named with the year following it to establish it was different than the original and all the other years. Any changes would have updated next to the section in the table of contents so you could see what had changed from the previous year and familiarize yourself with anything new. Now with that background, we will introduce Karen. Karen had been with the company a pretty long time, about 10 years I believe. She was fine at her job, just fine. She would get things done, but not without making everyone else miserable in the process. She would ask questions that had already been answered and basically just waste everyone's time for fun. She was just plain nasty to people and tried as hard as she could to make everyone else stay far away from her. The worst thing about her was she always seemed to be looking for a fight or looking for a reason to complain. She had threatened lawsuits a few times over any small thing, but would always just get over it and drop it because she knew no laws had been broken and it would never go anywhere. She'd comment on how she should sue basically every business she ever went to because she could live off the settlement and retire early, over the smallest issues that you can imagine. She did her job and we never had a valid reason to fire her, especially knowing how lawsuit happy she was, so she stayed. Karen's job description, as per the handbook, called for a bachelor's degree. Karen did not have a bachelor's degree, but had been hired prior to that being a requirement, so she was grandfathered in. One day, a position above hers became open. A guy who we will call Terry had recently completed his master's degree after taking night classes for a few years, and since an internal promotion is typically better than an outside hire, he was chosen for the promotion. Terry had been at the company about 4.5 years and was well liked and great at his job. The new job required a master's degree in his job description, and him being a recent grad, it was a perfect fit, and everyone was happy for him. Everyone but Karen. Since she was constantly looking for something to sue about, she took it as a direct insult that she had not been considered for this promotion that she was not at all qualified for. She immediately cried discrimination and told our boss her lawyer would be in touch. We were all perplexed since it was very clear that this position required a master's degree, and given that she didn't even have a bachelor's degree, there's no way she could have been hired for the role. What we soon realized was that Karen had saved the original company handbook named Company Handbook and had not bothered to open or save any new editions that were sent in the following 8 years. She just assumed no changes had been made and that it was just sent every year to ensure that all employees had it. If she's bothered to open the file, she would have seen the sections that say updated in the table of contents. Since Karen cried lawsuit a lot, no one expected much of this since it was a ridiculous claim. But sure enough, Karen gives her resignation letter via email, and it is scathing about how she can't bear to work in such a discriminatory environment that would only promote men. When any of the higher-ups try to speak to her about this and clear up the confusion, she basically tells them to F off and to read the dang email. I don't know any more of an explanation. She basically goes full Karen. Not long after, a letter comes in from her lawyer asking for a settlement to avoid a discrimination case. What Karen hadn't realized was that our boss's sister-in-law owned a law firm. She didn't really take on clients herself anymore, and mostly just managed the other lawyers of her firm. She was basically semi-retired. What this meant was that she had plenty of time to review any letters from Karen's lawyer and advise us. Since Karen didn't bother to read any of the updated handbooks, she was unaware that this position had required a master's degree for many years now. I believe about 6 years. She supplied her lawyer with the original company handbook from 9 years ago, and he used that as a reference in his settlement demand. This was when we realized that she hadn't read any new handbooks in years. Since Karen rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, Boss's sister-in-law decided to personally take on the case. Every letter Karen's lawyer sent, she sent back one 3 times in length. Some of it wouldn't even really say anything, just wordiness, but it would certainly take Karen's lawyer a while to read it. And he did not come cheap. After several of these letters, they realize no settlement is going to happen, and they want to take it to court. It's a pretty cut and dry case. Boss's sister-in-law shows evidence that Karen has received all the updates via email. After the change was made and the handbook was sent out, HR even sent an email to Karen specifically letting her know that she was grandfathered in and doesn't need to worry, to which Karen replied, "Okay, thank you," confirming receipt of it. The best part was when Boss's sister-in-law said that they couldn't break company rules to give Karen a job she was totally unqualified for while neglecting another employee who went above and beyond to get his master's degree to advance, as that would be unfair to all other employees. Karen now had a huge, seriously huge bill from her lawyer for all of these letters and filing the case and so on. No job, no one she could list as a positive recommendation, and no degree. In the time she had been at the company, it had become industry standard to require a bachelor's degree, so she was effectively shut out of her career. It would also be hard to explain how you work somewhere for a decade and don't have a letter of recommendation from anyone there. If only she had read her darn emails. Half-brothers threatened to sue me over $16,000. It cost them $158,000 and possibly their parents' marriage. Posted by Deleted. When I, 25-year-old female, was 3, my grandparents passed away. They set up a savings account in my name, and the account was meant to be accessed by me when I was 21. At that point, it contained just over $300,000. My grandparents left me a letter saying that they would like me to share the money fairly with any other Smith-Jones children, meaning my full siblings, Dad's a Smith and Mom's a Jones. By fairly, they meant that they wanted me to assess the situation and judge for myself what was fair. I never had full siblings, but I have 2 half-brothers, Mac and Joe Smith, who are Dad and Stepmom's kids. Due to the specific wording my grandparents used, I legally never had to give Mac or Joe any money. However, I see Mac and Joe as my brothers, and as the money came from our grandparents, I felt that the fairest thing to do would be to assign each of us $100,000, so we each all got an equal-sized lump sum. And I figured that when Mac, the youngest, turned 21 and took his $100,000, we could split any remaining money. When I turned 21, Dad suggested that I buy a house with my $100,000. I found a place that I loved, but it was $130,000 and I couldn't get a mortgage, so Dad said, I should borrow $30,000 from the account. I did, figuring I could pay it back before my brothers turned 21, and I have been repaying it. The account should be at $208,000 right now, but due to me withdrawing and then repaying that money, it's at $195K, so I still owe $13,000. Joe turned 21 recently, and as I was giving him his $100,000, Joe noticed that there was less in the account than there should be. I explained, and I said that I was going to put it all back before Mac, now 19, turns 21. Joe told Mac, and both boys said that I stole from them and owed them the full $13,000 back, plus $3,000 of interest that they felt they would have gotten, and they wanted it all paid by this summer, which gave me less than 6 months to bring up the account to $211,000. I said I'd do it, but over 2 years as planned. The boys then wrote up a contract to that effect. I went to sign it until I saw that it said 6 months to pay it all back. I wouldn't sign as we agreed on 2 years. They said that I should figure it out as they were entitled to that money and would be seeking legal advice. Later that day, I got an email clearly written by them saying that they intend to sue me for the $16,000 plus whatever is currently in the account and additional damages and emotional distress on top of that. At this point in time, I'd given Joe about $50,000 of his $100,000 because he wanted it in installments. I responded that legally, they were never entitled to any of it, and given their attitudes, I'd say they've already received an amount that I deem fair, so that $50K was all they were getting. I then got a barrage of texts and calls and emails yelling at me for going back on our deal, and I blocked them. They then took to social media, saying that I was trying to screw them out of their inheritance and rallying our extended family into harassing me over this, and it mostly worked as a lot of people messaged me. However, I got a message from this guy called Chris Smith. Chris said that he was 27 and claimed to be my half-brother. I had never met him before, but he sent me photos of him as a kid with our dad, our grandparents, and me. He showed me that he also had an account with $150K in it and a scan of a letter from our grandparents saying this money was meant to be shared fairly among Dad's illegitimate children. Chris also told me that we have another half-sibling who is 18. He'd been looking for me for a while, but only found me when Dad shared Joe's post, which had me tagged. We checked with the solicitor to make sure, and as the boys are legitimate, they aren't entitled to anything in Chris's illegitimate kid fund. And as they are my half-siblings, they aren't entitled to anything in my Smith-Jones Kids Fund either. I sent the boys a letter formally telling them to back off, stop posting about me online, and enjoy the $50K because it's all they're getting. The day they received the letter, Chris got a private message from Dad asking if the boys can have some of Chris's fund. Chris also said no and told Dad that we had met. I told Mac and Joe about Chris and the other half-sibling with Chris's permission. So it looks like my grandparents, knowing about Chris before they passed, set up 2 funds. One for the kids that Dad had with my mother, who was still his wife when they passed, and one for children born out of Dad's affairs, presumably to make sure that no one tried to screw anyone else over out of hurt feelings. I'm getting a lot of crap, but I'm holding firm on my decision. The boys have realized that I won't back down on this, and it sounds like I've caused a schism at their house, as Joe has all the money and no intention of sharing, so Mac is now feeling twice as screwed. Plus, Stepmom apparently didn't know about the other half-siblings or that my half-sister was born after she and Dad got married, and she's made Dad move into a hotel. It sounds like Dad is looking for a long-term living arrangement outside of the family home because it looks like she is not letting him move back in. Dad is begging me to reconsider, but honestly, I'm done with all of them except Chris and my sister. Rental permit drama, HOA in violation of the CC&Rs, posted by LaCoy. Back in 2020, I applied for a rental permit in my small community and was placed on the waiting list. I would periodically check my status, and I was consistently told that I was first on the list. Per our CC&Rs, there are only 4 rental permits available. Fast forward to 5 months ago, I found out that 3 of 4 permits were granted to a single person. As soon as I found out, I brought this to the board and explained how unfair it was for one person to have 3 of 4 permits in a very small community with less than 40 homes. They essentially told me that there was nothing they could do since the prior board approved it and I would have to wait until a permit became available. Recently, one of the tenants moved out of the rental owned by the person with 3 of the permits. I then checked Zillow and I found out that the landlord had had the home listed for lease. Per our rules, the rental permit provides a 60-day right to lease. If you're unable to rent your home in that time, then it's passed to the person on the waiting list. If there is no one on the waiting list, then the HOA will grant you another 60-day right to lease. Additionally, the home has been empty for the last month. Per our rules, as soon as the number of rentals drops below 4, the person on the waiting list has the right to the permit. I reached out to the board to let them know that the unit had been listed for lease for more than 60 days, and that due to only 3 homes currently being leased, I was entitled to the permit. After almost 2 weeks, including me sending a follow-up email, the president said he investigated and determined that the current permit holder had a right to the permit. He basically ignored all the facts presented, including listing screenshots and me referencing the CCRs verbatim, and flat out said they would not grant me the permit. At this point, the HOA is blatantly violating their own rules, even when provided with evidence of the violation. Any thoughts on what to do next? Do you agree with this comment? You could see what other things are not being done around the community. Put that together and go to your neighbors. Get them to recall the current president. Then it gives you the chance to run or talk to the new president about getting the option to rent out your home. The other options are to see or consult an attorney, since the board is ignoring governing documents. Man, if OP could take over or get a lawyer that knows this stuff, what do you think would happen? Online Fraud Revenge, posted by Deleted. This story is about 15 years old, so some of the details may have gotten lost, but it's a good, real pro-revenge story. Hope you like it. Back in the day, there was a certain online retailer notorious for allowing, by default, differing shipping and billing addresses. They would also ship merchandise to one address and then send the bill to the different billing address, no questions asked. Very unethical, but they collected enough from their victims to continue operating, I guess. One day, I find in the mail one of these bills sent to me by my name at my address for several $100s of exercise equipment, of which I had 0 previous knowledge. Part of my job at the time was to persuade folks in person or over the phone to give me information, and I was reasonably good at it. It took me 3 calls to the nefarious retailer before I managed to get a rapport with one of their employees. I sensed the connection and let myself speak freely, and eventually this woman's conscience got the better of her, and she conceded that the retailer was knowingly perpetrating these frauds on a massive scale in concert with many scammers who knew the vendor had no qualms about its evil business practices. She gave me the purchaser's phone number. I still remember the scumbag's name, but I won't use it here. I placed my call, posing as an employee of the vendor trying to clear up a mix-up that was delaying delivery of the items to the purchaser. In an unbelievably fortunate event, buyer's daughter answered the phone. Sounded about 10 to 12. Nice kid. Sweetie, blah blah blah, we would love for you to get your shipment, but we are having some issues with your shipping address. We are so sorry for the delay, blah blah blah. Can I speak to your daddy? Dad isn't home. Well, I'd hate for him not to get his stuff. Can you help me out? This kid is eating out of my hand by then. I feel a bit bad about deceiving her, but you can't keep your filthy deeds from involving your family ever, so here we go. I get the name and the address. Google Maps, or some other mapping service, as I'm not even sure it was a Google Maps at the time, shows a pizza joint around the corner, and I stare balefully at the rectangle representing the house. One more thing, sweetie. You've been a big help to your dad. Can you give him a message for me? Tell him it was a nice try. He'll understand. Thank you. Bye. Place another call to the retailer armed with the order number. Since they don't care about any of this, and the shipping and billing addresses now match, they change the billing name and address just like that. I grill the operator about the changed info and am assured that they will now bill the shippee. I still have no idea how someone completely unknown to me in upstate New York got my address on the opposite side of the country. Still smug for months. My super fun encounter with an entitled mom, also a complete stranger, who just left her kid with me while I was enjoying a massaging chair at the mall, posted by Majestic Jazz Hands. I'm so excited to finally have something to contribute to this sub. Also, heads up, it's a somewhat long story. I decided to go to the mall today because I haven't been there in a while and I needed some stuff. Due to the nature of my career, my back hurts only just all the dang time. I came upon a section of those leg and back massaging chairs and said, heck yeah. Some things to know about these chairs. These go through a series of 4 to 5 different types of massages, while it also squeezes and massages your legs. One of the types of massages it does is in your back. It just goes up and down your spine with hard and fast chopping-like motions. There's also other sections of these grouped together chairs placed all throughout the mall, so there were others that could be used, and in the area where I was, there were 5 other chairs grouped around me. I was in the upper left corner of that group of chairs. There was not a single person using any of the other 5 chairs. I wasn't really paying attention to where I was located, but right in front of me was a baby clothes store. Some things to know about me. I am on the spectrum, and I'm also not a fan of kids or babies. Most importantly, if I'm getting my half-hour massage, I don't want to have to interact with other people. I just want to be left the heck alone. Here comes our entitled mother. Entitled kid, he looks like he's like 9 or 10ish. I don't know, I'm not great at guessing kids' ages. He's also pretty chunky, which is a detail you'll need for later. Entitled mom also had a baby in a stroller, but it didn't really do anything relevant to this incident. So they end up standing right in front of me, and the entitled mom told the entitled kid that she wanted to look in this baby clothes store, but the kid didn't want to, so she tells him to go get a massage on one of the chairs while he waits for her. And of course, they head straight to the chair next to me. Why? There's 5 other whole available chairs. It's literally printed. How much money gets you however many minutes you get in the chair. She asked me the price, so I point to where it clearly tells you the prices. She then asks where to put the money in, so yet again, I point out exactly where it goes. It's even lit up brightly. But just before she's about to put the money in, the conversation between them happens. Kid says, well, what if I don't like it? The mom says, you will, it's really relaxing. But what if it hurts? It won't. See, this lady's been sitting here for a while and she's enjoying it. But what if I don't enjoy it? Can you go first and see if you like it? No, mommy's going right over to look at the baby clothes, but maybe if you ask nicely, this nice lady will let you try her. I jump in. Nope, not getting up. It's only $1 for 5 minutes. If he doesn't like it, he can get off. Entitled mom just gave me a ticked look and said, fine, kid, just sit here and try it and come join me in the store if you don't like it. So the kid, yes, I'm still salty at this point that they put his butt in the seat next to me and not any of the 5 other completely open and available chairs, starts off not doing anything except just sitting there, thank goodness. But then an instant later, all heck breaks loose when the chair simultaneously grabs his leg good and tight, and then the chopping setting gets going. The kid just starts making this really loud crying and whining that starts off somewhat quietly, but gets insanely loud when he realizes his legs are too big to get out of the grip of the chair. I just said, dude, calm down, the leg grip will let go in a minute and then you can get out. But his cry yelling, ah, builds to a shrieking, Mom! That kid has massive lungs. That yell was so incredibly loud and went on for so long until his mom comes flying out of the store and just parks her baby stroller right in front of me, where it starts crying, and the mom starts yelling over the kid in the chair, asking him what's wrong, and the kid says, this chair's punching me in my back and it's got my legs and I'm trapped. Mom starts trying to pick the kid up, but the leg part lets go, so they both kind of just stumble back into the stroller, which makes the baby start crying even louder. Then mom says to me, why didn't you pull him out when it started hurting him because it was set too high? Let me interject here. The settings are pre-adjusted. You can't change them. But most importantly, how is this my gosh darn fault to begin with? Then he says, oh, you could have just come into the store and get me? Again, how is this my fault or responsibility? The kid was fake sniffling because he wasn't even crying to begin with, just doing an insanely loud whining and screech, so she told him they'll go to the food court to get ice cream. Not the most exciting story on here, but incredibly annoying to deal with when I just wanted to be left the heck alone on my one day off and enjoy my dang chair massage. This story just happened and I don't even know how it's legal. It's insane. It's called Karen Manager Made Me Stand Inside the Freezer as Punishment. Was this legal? Posted by ThrowRA102710. A few months ago in June, I started my job. It's a fast food restaurant, but it's also my first job. I'm 19 female in the state of Florida. I'm going to say the name of the company is Arby's, but not the specific store. On August 24th, 2023, I was working 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. that day, and somebody asked me to stay late 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. I received 2 30-minute breaks for each shift. I was talking with another shift manager who asked if I'll be okay and comfortable. I said that I'm fine, I'm just tired and slow. Assistant manager, 58 female, hears this and asked me to follow her into the freezer and made me stand there as she screamed at me, saying that she disliked lazy, annoying employees like me that complain and whine about the job. She said she's a widow living by herself that only makes $15 an hour and that she's tired too, but doesn't complain. Then states that it's unfair nobody asked her permission for an extra worker ruining her plans and labor. Then also states that corporate's been up her butt and she's always getting in trouble because of the troublesome new hires. Fast forward after the conversation, she told me to stay where I was standing and think about if I want to work or not, and she will come back to check on me. I'm not sure how long I was in there because she confiscated my cell phone after she left the freezer. The work uniform is a t-shirt plus back pants and apron, so it was very cold. A different manager, 20 male, found me as he came inside to get a box and asked what the heck I was doing. I told him it was cold and I felt tired, so I sat down and closed my eyes. He told me not to put up with assistant manager's crap and helped me outside and gave me a jacket and a hot drink. I sat at the desk trying to feel better before I went back to work. Apparently, she clocked me out the time I was in the freezer, so I wasn't even paid for that. I did as I was told, but shift manager 20 male said that he ended up arguing with her about mistreating me and the previous employees who all quit. On August 8th, she yelled at a girl, 16, for making the wrong sandwich, who went to the bathroom to cry and called her mom. The girl quit, but HR has so much evidence on her. Side note, there was a big store meeting in May 2022 before I started working there. I heard from the other managers that the higher-ups yelled at her and wrote her up for mistreating employees. They stated that HR did a big investigation and gave her a warning and a mandatory ethics course. I immediately called HR after the freezer incident, and there are cameras and witnesses that day. There has been a week-long investigation and meetings. Due to Hurricane Idalia and Labor Day, it's been a little delayed. HR said that they reprimanded her and would be giving me a $50 bonus compensation. I was wondering if what happened to me was ethical. I have a hopeful feeling that all the previous string of incidents and all the former complaints filed against the assistant manager are helping HR and corporate see that what she's doing is not good. I also have not signed anything or agreed to anything. There have been separate meetings without me, and 2 meetings I have went to at work was one with the general manager, assistant manager, and the district supervisor and the area supervisor. The second meeting was with the higher-ups, corporate, and HR. I have taken the guidance of what people have told me to hopefully make a chance at this workplace, including a better work environment. For people asking why I just didn't leave or why I put up with this, I don't know really what to do, and I had a lot of exhaustion from working the first shift. I also heard a lot of things about her and the incidents where people have made complaints to her because she yells at them or treats them bad. This was my first job because many others, Chipotle, Panera Bread, Target, and etc., didn't hire me. Also, assistant manager has been working for 23 years now, although she gets transferred around every few years. Not sure if it's complaint related. She has been at this exact store for 3 years now. I'm told that her work ethic has always been like this. I don't know her too well as she is night shift manager, so I only see her if I happen to work nights. I do not. I'm a college student who prefers working mostly 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. 2 to 3 days a week. I need money to pay for college and bills. we've had one big store-wide meeting where everybody, 16 workers at the time, had to come and sit down to talk about treating employees with respect. Now, the phone confiscation thing is legitimate and allowed by the company and store. Many other people have had their phones confiscated. After I left the freezer and clocked back in, she confiscated this other college guy team member's cell phone and put it in a safe. I'm not sure if it can help me in any way, but I did mention it to the higher-ups in corporate. Do you agree with this comment? Talk to a lawyer, but also don't let people treat you this way. The Arby's Corporation in all likelihood will terminate that manager and probably offer you a nuisance settlement like $2,500 if you sign a release. You'll give half of that to your lawyer. Far more valuable is the lesson you've learned. Walk out of the freezer next time. Know your worth. No worker in this country deserves that kind of treatment, and we have laws to ensure that no worker has to tolerate it. Well, this just sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen, doesn't it? I mean, I wouldn't want to take a tiny little, oh, here, just take this money and run kind of thing when half of it's going to a lawyer. This is crazy. I mean, what do you think about this? Now, these next two stories are by the same OP, and they're kind of connected, so get ready for this. You want my dog? Posted by ULFR. Well, I think it's fairly safe to assume that I've lost a couple of friends over this, but it wasn't me what did it. This weekend, a friend of mine asked me to keep an eye on her two kids while she and her hubby went away for the weekend for some couple time. Her mother was initially going to watch the kids, but that fell through on short notice. She called me at 3 p.m. on a Friday to come over in 3 hours. My friend knew that I probably wasn't doing anything, which was both hurtful and accurate. I said, sure. She's got two kids, a girl who is 8 and a boy who is 5. They're good kids, for the most part. The boy has a little bit of a snitching problem and the girl has a sharing problem, but it's 2 days. So I show up Friday after work while my friend gives me the rundown and her husband tells the kids that he will beat them with their sibling if they're bad. The kids were unimpressed. The parents leave and it's just me and the kids in the house, and it's immediate pandemonium. The brother snitches on his sister for taking an extra cookie. The sister cries to me that her brother touched her Switch, and I make the executive decision that they've got too much energy, and if they're tuckered out, they'll hopefully chill. So I asked the kids to track down bathing suits because we're going to my gym, which has a pool and a guest policy. I did let Mom know what we were up to before we left, and I asked if it was okay if I brought my dog over. He doesn't shed and is house trained. She said that was fine. Operation Pool was a great success, though the locker room got a bit dicey. That's a whole other story coming up in a minute. Once everyone was appropriately tired, including me, we made a pit stop on the way back to their house to grab my pooch. He's extremely well behaved and loves kids, and both kids were immediately all about the Dexter, and the Dexter was all about the kids. Ground rules: no pulling on his fur, and he goes where he wants. Kids kind of struggle with the notion that a dog is not a toy. I obviously kept him out of places where he wasn't supposed to go, but I'm a grown-up, allegedly. Miraculously, after the swim and chasing the dog around the house left the kids too pooped to pop, and both fell asleep watching a Disney film on the TV. After the movie, I woke the kids up to trot off to bed, and I didn't make them brush their teeth. For the record, the son did indeed yeet me under a bus when Mommy called in the morning. I told the kiddos that if they left their doors open, Dexter might sneak in and give them cuddles. I increased the likelihood of this by sleeping on the couch and not leaving him a spot. He expressed his displeasure with me by flouncing off and going into the boys' room to sleep. Great success. Saturday, we went for a hike in the morning, had a nap, and then played ball with the dog and generally had a pretty chill day. Diffused the sharing issue by explaining to the girl that the pup has feelings and wants just like any person, and she can't control him that way. She appeared thoughtful, and then immediately started yelling at her brother for hogging the dog again. At least she wasn't mad at the dog. I successfully heated up the casserole Mom had left me for dinner following her carefully laid out instructions, admonished the kids to not give him people food, and was soundly ignored. I did draw the line at a couple morsels from each kid and put my foot down. More than that, and he's gonna get the runs, and nobody wants that. That night, I made sure Sis got a turn by again hogging the couch and also closing the boy's door, since he got a turn already. The girl was smug. The boy made me call his mom. Mom wasn't happy that my dog was in her kids' beds. I reminded her that he doesn't shed and can't smell worse than the kids, and her daughter might burn the house down with us inside if she doesn't get a turn. Mom accepted defeat. Saturday night was again relatively peaceful, though toothbrushing did happen. Early Sunday morning, I got woken up by having my dog step on my junk, which is a thing he's really good at, and he was mad at me for not leaving any room. I made room. Apparently, the girl tried to do something he didn't like, and he noped out of there. She wasn't happy about that, but was appeased by my pain enough to go back to bed. This morning was relatively chill, some more playing with the dog and some more team tug of war, and Mom and Dad got back around lunchtime and thanked me for keeping their kids in one piece. The kids said bye to the pup, and there were tears, and I loaded myself and my dog and went back to home to enjoy the relative peace and quiet. Yeah, I wish that it ended there. Maybe an hour after we got home, I get a phone call from a very frazzled sounding mom with the kids crying in the background. She says they need my dog now. I'm sorry, what? You don't need a dog, you need my dog? Well, like I don't need to come back and visit soon, you just want him? Well, the kids got so attached and they won't stop crying about missing the dog, and her husband don't have time for 2 kids and a puppy and more guilt-inducing word vomit that was having precisely 0 effect on me. Abso-fluffing-lutely not. Click. Still getting text about being reasonable and you have time to train a new dog. 48 hours of free babysitting isn't enough? You want my dog too? Not in this lifetime. Update. The parents offered to pay me for my time over the weekend, but the rate for 2 full days of childcare was kind of a lot. They don't have a lot of disposable income. It was an emergency and I had nothing better to do with my time, so I told them not to sweat it. My pup is chipped and is still sleeping off his big weekend, but he's going nowhere solo and I do have cameras up. I also texted my friend's husband asking him what the heck happened and why does his wife want my dog this morning. He replied back with a lot of question mark, genuinely hoping sanity breaks out and we can move past this, but ain't nobody is pup napping my dog. Also, for those curious about the story of what happened at my gym's locker room, that's coming up next. This is a family locker room for families, posted by ULFR. To recap, I was placed in possession of a pair of kids, 8 female and 5 male, on a turbo short notice over the weekend. On Friday, as soon as the parents left, pandemonium reigned, and I knew I'd need to get the energy out of the kids or I'd be dead by Sunday. So I had them collect bathing suits and we all went to my gym, which has a guest policy and a pool. I got the kids signed in as my guests for the evening and asked a bit uncomfortably what the correct thing to do would be, given I was in charge of a boy and a girl. The girl at the front desk laughed a little at me and said that the family locker rooms were down the same hallway as the women's locker rooms. Oh, it felt very, very odd walking down the forbidden hallway, but true to her word, there were 2 big doors, one that said families and one that said women. The boy kid really wanted to wander into the women's locker room, which got vetoed almost immediately. We get in there, and there's stalls inside for changing, basically a closet with a changing room door on it. Me being hyper aware that anything going even slightly wrong in relation to someone else's naked child is a very, very bad place for misunderstandings, I decided that we'd take turns. The girl would go first, get out of her clothes, change into her suit, and then come hang with me while her brother did the same. And then, when it was my turn, I'd best be seeing 2 pairs of ankles under the door the whole time, or someone's getting left in the locker room hung by their bathing suit. Happily enough, nothing went wrong. On our end, anyway. Unfortunately, while the girl was changing, a mom and her son came into the family locker room and looked confused. "Why are you and your son just standing there?" says she. "Oh, I'm just watching the kids and his sister's changing. They're not my children. I figured this was the safest for everyone," says I, thinking, oh gosh, no, please, it's Friday. She rears back in shock, raises her voice. "They're not your children, right?" "Nope, I just borrowed them so their mom could get some alone time with Dad." At this point, the little dude is hiding behind me and the clothing rustling from the little girl has stopped. "Ma'am, I'm just trying to get them changed and into the pool. I can't take a little girl into the men's locker room," says I, thinking I'm not precisely comfortable in there, and I can't imagine it would go well with a little girl. "This is a family locker room, for families, not for babysitters, and who thought you were mature enough to watch two kids on their own? I'm getting you removed," says she, and then yanks her child out behind her to go yell at someone else at the front desk. The boy tugged on my pants and looked up at me. I think that lady is crazy. I looked down at the little dude and nodded, but made a shh sound and told the girl to get changed pronto. The woman didn't come back in, and the kids didn't wander off while I was getting changed. We had a great time in the pool, and I didn't see the kid or his mom while we were in the pool or after. Don't know what happened. There was a different desk attendant when we left. How would you handle this insane Karen literally calls the cops on OP? This is called evict me without cause and only give me till midnight to be out. No problem. Posted by Sean NJ222. So, once upon a time, I was living in a not legal basement apartment of an old Hungarian woman's house. I was poor. The place was cheaper than what was around, so I took it. How bad could it be? She was horrific. At first, she was an okay landlady, but then things started to turn. First, I noticed that things were off when I got home from work. Ever get that feeling that someone was in your room? Yeah, that. So I asked her if she'd been in there, and she denied it. Then I set up a camera, and I caught her on camera. I asked her again, and she denied it, saying that she's never gone into my apartment without telling me. And then I showed her the video, and she got mad at me. I work nights. One time, she came in during the daytime, and I was there, in bed, naked under the sheets. So I woke up when she came in and asked if I could help her, and she said no and left. After that, she would call me lazy boy when she saw me, assuming I didn't work since it was at night. Things kept getting worse. She'd sometimes shut off the water when she thought I was using too much, or when I refused to share my Wi-Fi password with her other tenant. Finally, one night I had some friends over for a birthday. There were 6 of us total, and it was around 11 p.m., and trust me when I say, we were not being loud at all. Literally, just hanging around the coffee table eating cheesecake, talking, and laughing. She came into my apartment, started yelling that I was having a loud party with too many people in the middle of the night. She actually came and grabbed my shirt, telling me everyone had to leave. Oh heck no, that was it. So I pushed her off of me and the police were called. That Monday, she left a really poorly written eviction notice on my door. Seriously, handwritten, telling me to be out by Saturday by midnight. Here's the malicious compliance. By 11:59 p.m. that Saturday, I had all my stuff in the U-Haul. My friends and I were just working on bagging up the trash and the other stuff for the dump when she came in and yelled at me that it was past midnight. No problem. I got up and I left, leaving a huge pile of junk in the bedroom and the storage room, easily 2 pickup trucks worth of crap that I wasn't taking. She actually called my father, who was my emergency contact on my application, to tell me that it cost her $400 to haul it all away and that I owed her money. He blocked the number. An update. She was showing the apartment when I was still living there. She didn't tell me. So when she let 2 strangers in the daytime, waking me up again, I stood up, fully naked, full staffed, and said that I wouldn't rent from her if it were the last apartment in town. The couple quickly left. This Karen gets exposed in front of the whole neighborhood. She's actually an HOA president too. This one's posted by Odin Chapeau. Let's see how. So this story takes place a few days ago. I live in an apartment and I was cleaning the cave with my father. There, I found a big box with all of my old toy cars. All of them look pristine, and there are some that honestly look very good. So I say to myself, hey, those toys seem to work. Maybe I can give them to the kids that live nearby. So I take the box upstairs and I put a message saying that I am giving them away. After maybe 2 minutes, I have an answer from a mom that we are going to name Karen B. She says that she's interested and that if I want, I can get them to her or she will send her son to pick up the box. In my extreme kindness, I say that I will deliver. Then she gave me her address, saying that her son is at her home. And then I noticed. They are the neighbor next door, and she does have a kid, but they're something like 15 and 23. That's when I understood that she doesn't want the box for her kids, but to sell them. Now I face a dilemma. I can give her the box and let her win, or don't, and she's going to be a pain in the butt later. She's the president of an HOA, and I have no choice, so I choose the first option, give the box to her son, ask why he wanted it, and apparently it's for a collection. And I come home fuming a bit and feeling defeated. And then I saw a post on the convo from a lady that I know, and that says that her church is looking for toys for children in need. So I wrote, "Sorry, the Karen family took the whole box for her kids' collection, but I'm really sure that she can give a few to such a good association." Karen then posted a really salty message saying that of course she will and blah blah blah. But her pettiness and BS excuses were showed to the public, so I feel much better about the whole case.